I'm 64 years old, and if you'd told me 5 years ago that remarrying would nearly cost me everything I spent 3 decades building, I would have laughed. But it happened, almost. And the only reason I still have my vineyard, my winery, and my freedom is because when I married Graham Cole, I made one decision that saved me. I never told him, or his 3 grown children, that the estate we lived on wasn't family property. It was mine. All of it. Every acre, every vine, every barrel, every bottle with my name on it. Let me back up. My name is Evelyn Hart, though everyone in town calls me Evie. In 1989, I bought my first 5 acres in Soma Valley at 34 years old. I was a single mother working as a real estate agent, and people acted like I'd lost my mind. A woman on her own buying raw land in wine country? The bank practically snorted me out the door, but I had a vision, and more importantly, I had grit. I planted my first Pinot Noir vines with my own hands. My daughter, Lauren, was 7 then. After school, she'd come outside in her sneakers and help me tie the young vines to their posts with her small, careful fingers. For 3 years, nothing came of it worth pressing. 3 years of selling houses during the day and digging, hauling, pruning, and learning at night. 3 years of neighbors whispering and betting on when I'd give up and sell. I didn't. By 1995, I had 15 acres planted and my first vintage bottled. By 2000, I'd expanded to 50 acres and opened a modest tasting room. By 2010, Hart Estate Winery wasn't just a dream, it was a destination. 75 acres of prime Soma Valley terroir, a stone winery building, a tasting room that seated 40, and wines that started showing up in serious publications. People love the romantic version of that story. The sunsets and the vines and the label design. They don't talk about the 16-hour days, the loans I had to personally guarantee. Harvest seasons when I was out there at 2 in the morning checking the crush, the late payments I juggled to keep the lights on. Every risk was mine, every victory too. By the time I turned 60, Lauren had graduated from UC Davis with a degree in viticulture and took a job at a winery in Napa. She didn't want to inherit my life. She wanted her own, and I respected that. My estate had grown to 150 acres, worth at least $8 million, probably more. I wasn't the kind of wealthy that bought yachts, but I was secure, proud, comfortable, and lonely. My first husband, Lauren's father, left when she was 3. I dated now and then over the years, but nothing lasted. I was too busy building my dream to chase romance. Then, with Lauren grown and the business running smoothly with the help of my vineyard manager, Mateo, the farmhouse started to feel too quiet. The silence got loud. That's when I met Graham at a charity wine auction in San Francisco. He was 67, a retired investment banker, recently widowed, tall, silver-haired, polished in the way that comes from expensive suits and lifetime memberships. He bid on a case of my 2015 Reserve Pinot. When he won, he came over, took my hand, and smiled like the world was still kind. "I've heard wonderful things about Hart Estate," he said. "I'd love to visit sometime." He visited the following weekend, then the weekend after that. By his 3rd visit, Graham and I were having dinner together. By the 6th month, he was talking about the future in that gentle, inevitable tone that makes you feel chosen. He was attentive, thoughtful. He brought me first editions of wine memoirs and old books on fermentation. He planned weekends in Carmel and Mendocino and insisted I let someone else handle the tasting room for once. He listened, really listened when I talked about the strain of running a winery in an industry that still treated women like mascots. He seemed fascinated by the story of what I'd built. Looking back, I can see what I missed. At the time, I was simply a woman who'd spent most of her adult life alone, being seen in a way that felt tender. I let myself fall. We got engaged after 8 months. He proposed at sunset on my western slope, the block with the sweeping view of the valley, with a ring that could have paid for a new press. I said yes with tears in my eyes, and for a little while I believed I was stepping into a softer chapter. That's when the questions started. Not from Graham at first, from his children. He had 3. Spencer, 42, who worked in finance like his father, Vanessa, 39, a real estate developer with sharp eyes and sharper heels, and Logan, 35, who who did something vague in tech consulting and spoke like every sentence was a pitch deck. 2 weeks after the engagement, they came to visit the estate. Vanessa walked through my farmhouse like she was conducting an appraisal. She ran her fingers over the stonework, peered through windows, asked questions without taking a breath. How many acres is this? What's annual production? Who handles distribution? Do you have partners? I kept my answers airy, deliberately unspecific. It's been in the heart name for a long time, I said. It's complicated. Spencer wanted numbers. What kind of revenue does a boutique winery like this generate? What are margins like? How's the debt structured? I smiled the way you smile at someone who doesn't know they're being rude. We do well enough. I'm not really motivated by profit. It's about the craft. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Sure, of course. Logan, the youngest, asked about my will, actually asked about it over lunch like he was ordering another glass. Now that you and Dad are getting married, have you thought about estate planning? He said. It would be smart to get everything organized. Tax purposes, you know. I looked at Graham, expecting him to shut it down. Instead, he squeezed my hand and nodded. Logan's right, Evie. We should both make sure our affairs are in order. It's responsible. Something in my stomach tightened, but I told myself it was normal. Families asked uncomfortable questions. Grief made people clingy. Money made people weird. I'd built a business in real estate. I'd seen greed before. I could handle a little awkwardness. The night before the wedding, Lauren flew up from Napa and sat with me on the porch, a glass of rosé sweating in her hand. Mom, she said, are you sure about this? I'm happy, I insisted. She didn't smile. His kids give me a strange vibe. Vanessa was looking at the winery building like she was pricing it. They're just protective, I said. Their mother died. He's all they have. Lauren leaned forward. Did you get a prenup? I did. Janet Park, my attorney and an old friend from my real estate days, had insisted. Graham acted wounded when I raised it, but he signed. Clean and clear, anything I owned before the marriage stayed mine. The land, the vines, the winery, the brand, mine. What I didn't tell Janet, what I didn't even tell Lauren, was the lie I told Graham and his children about what the estate actually was. Not a dramatic lie, just a strategic omission dressed up as tradition. I told them it was old family property. I implied there were other stakeholders, trusts, cooperative ownership, complicated layers beyond me. And when they pressed, I deflected. It's handled, I'd say. My attorney manages all of that. It wasn't guilt that kept me quiet. It was instinct. We married under an arch draped in grapevines, right on the estate. It was small and lovely. Lauren by my side, Graham beaming, Spencer, Vanessa, and Logan smiling like polished guests at a ribbon cutting. Vanessa even hugged me and called me Mom, which should have warmed me but somehow landed like performance. We didn't take a honeymoon. Harvest season was closing in, and I couldn't leave Mateo to handle it alone. Graham said he understood. He moved into the farmhouse with his furniture, his golf clubs, his framed photos, his quiet habits. For the first year, things felt steady. He played golf in Santa Rosa, hosted Sunday dinners, and sat on the porch at dusk with a glass of my wine like he belonged there. He didn't interfere. Then the second year arrived, and the air changed. It started with Spencer. He came alone one Saturday and asked if he could take a quick look at my books. Not as a critic, he claimed, just to help, just to offer guidance. Family to family. Dad mentioned you might want to expand distribution, he said, casual as a handshake. I've got connections. I could introduce you to the right people. I hadn't mentioned expanding distribution. Not to Graham, not to anyone. Thanks, I told him, keeping my tone light. But Mateo and I have it handled. We're happy with our distributors. Spencer's eyes stayed on me too long. You know, Evie, you're family now. We want to help. That's what families do. Soon after, Vanessa started showing up with real estate agents. The first time, she claimed it was for insurance. With climate change and fire risk, you might be underinsured, she said, already walking the property as if she owned the view. You should have an updated appraisal. I have excellent coverage, I replied. But do you know what you're sitting on? She pushed. Comparable properties in Soma are going for $12, $15 million. You should understand the value. I asked her to leave. She smiled like I'd made a cute joke and kept talking until I raised my voice. Logan was subtler. He came for dinner, chatted about his consulting work, then casually slid into suggestions. You know, lots of wineries are going direct to consumer, e-commerce, subscriptions. I could help you build out a real platform, family discount. I already have a website, I told him. Sure, he said, nodding like he'd heard a child say they'd already cleaned their room. But the most disturbing shift wasn't in the kids. It was in Graham. He began bringing papers to the kitchen table the way someone brings dessert, pleasant, inevitable. Just standard updates, he'd say. Beneficiaries, household accounts, responsible couple stuff. I read every word, always. Half the time, the documents were nothing like what he claimed. They weren't benign updates. They were power of attorney forms, authorizations, papers that would give him legal control over accounts I'd built from scratch. I'm not signing this, I said more than once. His expression would flatten, the warmth draining out of him like a glass tipped over. Why not? Because I don't sign things I don't fully understand. His voice would sharpen. Don't you trust me? We're married, Evie. It isn't about trust, I'd answer. And he would go cold, distant, silent for days. Then he'd return with flowers and charm as if nothing happened, as if I was the one being strange. Then came the phone calls. I noticed he started taking them outside, walking down between rows where I couldn't hear. When I asked who it was, he'd say, just Spencer, or just Vanessa, or nobody important. 3 years into the marriage, I came home from a distributor meeting in San Francisco and found Graham, Spencer, and Vanessa in my office inside the winery building. My filing cabinet was open. Paperwork, my paperwork, was spread across my desk. What are you doing? I demanded. They jumped like teenagers caught sneaking alcohol. Vanessa gathered papers too quickly. Spencer shut the cabinet. Graham smiled that smooth, practiced smile. We were looking for the insurance documents, darling. Vanessa's right, we should update your policy. Those are private business documents, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. You had no right to be in here. Graham's smile hardened. I'm your husband. We don't keep secrets in a marriage. That night, I called Janet Park. I need you to run a property check, I said. Make sure everything is still in my name. Every filing, every deed. Janet paused. Evie, what's going on? I don't know, I admitted, but I have a bad feeling. Janet called me 3 days later. Her voice was tight, professional in the way lawyers get when they're trying not to alarm you. Evie, she said, someone has been filing documents with the county. Transfer deeds, partnership agreements, papers that would give Graham and his children ownership stakes in Heart Estate Winery. I felt like the air had left my body. That's impossible. I never signed anything like that. I know, she replied, because the signatures are forgeries. Sloppy ones, too. Once you compare them to your real signature, it's obvious. I sat down on the porch steps, staring out at the vines I'd planted 30 years earlier with dirt still under my nails and hope in my chest. Can they do that? I asked. Just file fake papers? They can file them, Janet said. Whether they stand up in court is another matter. But Evie, this is fraud, a crime. She told me we needed an injunction, a police report, and that I needed to confront Graham. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I called Cal Rivers, a private investigator I'd known since my real estate days. I need everything, I told him, on Graham Cole, financial history, legal history, and I especially need you to look into his first wife, how she died, what happened to her estate. 2 weeks later, Cal slid a thick folder across a cafe table. Graham's first wife, Diane, had died 4 years earlier. 6 months before her death, she'd transferred her entire estate, a Pacific Heights home and investment accounts worth over $4 million, into Graham's name. She had early onset Alzheimer's. Her sister, Elaine, had tried to contest it, claimed Graham took advantage of Diane's diminished capacity, but Graham produced signed documents, powers of attorney, transfers, settled out of court. He kept everything. There was more. Before Diane, there was another wife, Marianne. She died in a fall at her vacation home. She, too, transferred her property to Graham shortly before her death. Her adult children tried to challenge it. Same attorneys, same outcome, 2 dead wives, 2 estates, same pattern. Spencer had a history of financial fraud lawsuits. Vanessa had lost her real estate license in Oregon over ethical violations. Logan had been fired from 2 consulting firms for undisclosed conduct. Cal looked me dead in the eye. This family are professionals. They've done this before. They're doing it to you now. I went back to Janet. I don't just want a divorce, I said. I want charges. We built the case piece by piece. Forensic accountants traced forged filings, emails between Spencer and Vanessa discussing value extraction, texts from Graham strategizing how to get me to sign. Then I planned my confrontation. I told Graham I wanted a family dinner to celebrate our anniversary. He was thrilled. Tables were set on the patio overlooking the vines. My best wines were poured. When everyone arrived, Spencer, Vanessa, Logan, Lauren, I welcomed them with a smile. Then my other guests arrived: Janet, Cal, Detective Rosa Alvarez, Elaine, and Nora, Marianne's daughter. Graham went pale. This, I said calmly, is a family dinner. Detective Alvarez stepped forward. Graham Cole, Spencer Cole, Vanessa Cole, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The arrests were chaos, tears, denials, threats. Graham stared at me with hatred. I loved you. No, I said quietly. You love my property. The trial took 8 months. Spencer and Vanessa pled guilty. Graham was convicted of elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. 12 years. The prenup held. He got nothing. Today I'm 69. Hart Estate thrives. Lauren came home. Mateo still runs the vineyard. I never remarried. And when people ask about the land, I tell them the truth now. I built this, I say, and it's staying mine. Because I was never their victim. I was their reckoning.